Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to Morning in the Valley. It is Wednesday, October the 8th, T-minus 26 days until the start of the 2025-26 season. We do have, of course, college basketball this weekend with some exhibition matchups. So the ball will be bouncing soon enough. Coming up in a matter of seconds, we will be joined by Jevin Redman. He is the radio voice of the Evansville Purple Aces, and we will continue our season previews of teams from around the Valley with the Evansville Purple Aces. So Jevin in the on-deck circle. We'll get to him in just a moment. While you're here, welcome. If you haven't done so already, please head to YouTube and subscribe to the program for free. Morning in the Valley. Easy to find. Subscribe, comment, share, like, all that good stuff, and help this program continue to get out in front of our Missouri Valley conference-loving basketball folks. Without further ado, let's welcome in our guest of honor this morning. He is the radio voice of the Evansville Purple Aces. He is Jevin Redman. Jevin, good morning. It's almost time. It's almost you are not one that is burdened by college football in your radio career. So I feel you almost have a. I am burdened by it's like, especially knowing, and I say burdened from a standpoint of it's like in a week we're going to have both going on at the same time. And it's like, holy cow. But 26 days out, where's your excitement level right now with getting ready to roll with a new season?
Yeah, I think when the calendar flips to October, the excitement really starts to ramp up. And it's been a busy time for us. We've had quite a few events. They had a kind of meet the team event the third weekend in September. They had a Makes Madness event into September. And then they had a kind of a closed door scrimmage for donors just this past Saturday. So a lot of events the last 3 or 4 weeks, which has kind of ramped up the energy behind the program. And yeah, I was just thinking we're about 2.5 weeks away from the first exhibition game. I'm ready, but I'm also not ready. So a few things I have to get in line. So it always kind of gets here quickly. You think you have time, and all of a sudden October's here and you've got the first game. But the excitement's there. They've got a good group, which we'll talk about, and I'm ready to go.
All right. It is year 4 of the David Ragland era. Last season, 11-21 overall, 8-12 in the Missouri Valley. Most conference wins since 2016 when the Aces made it all the way to Sunday in St. Louis. With the 6-7 months now of perspective looking back, how do you sort of look at last year as a total product?
Yeah, and I've said this to several different outlets. I think you have to look more at that conference record of 8-12, which is more indicative of the type of talent he had with the team. 11-21 overall, a bit misleading just because of their difficult non-conference schedule from a season ago, and they also battled just numerous injuries throughout the first month and a half. And I will say that the one thing I underestimated a bit, because I really hyped up last year's group, and they competed in conference play, but they had some lack of experience just at the college Division I level, and I think I kind of underestimated that with last year's group. What I will say with this year's group, it's a different story. I think talent-wise, they are equally as good as last year, if not better, but they have way more experience in this year's roster to where I think they should be ready to compete day one. Now, again, they have some tough non-conference games to schedule at Purdue, at Western Kentucky, at Notre Dame, and all of that. So I don't know what their non-conference record will be, but this group should be ready to compete more so day one than last year's group, which I think has added to the excitement.
David Ragland may have been the only coach in America. I don't know the last time a coach won 11 games and got a contract extension, but he did last year. And again, to your point, the overall record, not necessarily the sign of the growth this program has shown, but getting to the point now in year 3 to where you tied for 8th finish in the Valley, 8 conference wins. What did that say to you that Ziggy Siegfried, the athletic director, just felt confident enough in the path this program is on that, you know, it's a black and white business. Wins and losses mean so much, but at the same time, hey, let's not be blinded by 11-21. This guy's got the program going in the right direction.
Well, 2 things really stand out talking with Ziggy, and that is he's really harped on how they compete in conference, and the improvement has been there his first 3 years. I think last year they were more competitive in conference play, it felt, last year than 2 years ago. Even though the group 2 years ago had some big wins in Valley play as well. But Ziggy's always kind of harping, hey, I want to see improvement in conference. I want you to schedule tough the non-conference, so I'm not going to penalize you for your overall record. Sure, they want to be, at 500 or better, regardless of what the non-conference schedule is. But Coach Ragland has shown the improvement in Valley play. They were, I'd say, more competitive in their 8-12 conference record than what they showed a season ago. And number two, Ziggy's talked about, he wants stability. This is a program that before Coach Ragland got there, really cycled through coaches in a 3-4 year span. So he feels like he has stability. He views that improvement in conference and also how Coach Ragland does things off the court in the community. And they've pretty well done everything that they've said. I also think, too, the question, and it's a fair question, Coach Ragland still had a couple years on his existing deal. And the question I got is, well, why an extension now? Why not wait another year or two and see how these next years go? But I think Ziggy feels very confident about the group that he's brought in this year. I think they've done an outstanding job assembling the roster. I feel like in his time, this roster makes the most sense. And again, it's not that they weren't trying to make it make sense in previous years, but it just feels like at each position, they have depth, they have experience, and all their pieces fit better than maybe in previous years. So I give them a lot of credit. And I think the improvement in conference and the group that he's brought in this year and wanting that stability has led to Ziggy giving him that extension.
Before we talk about the additions, talk about the departures, it's sort of been the unfortunate byproduct of the portal era that we have seen David Ragland do an unbelievable job in finding diamonds in the rough on the recruiting trail, and then you maybe get 1 year and that's it. You look at the key departures: Tayshawn Comer, Gabriel Pizzato, Cam Hafner, your 3 double-digit scorers from a year ago, all moving on to other places. 7 guys in the portal. The one guy I'm not going to give any sort of grief to at all, not that I give really any to any of them, but Tanner Cuff going to Hawaii to complete his collegiate career. We'll give him a pass in any of these conversations. Of those 3, though, the 3 double-digit scorers, I know you'd love to have all of them, but is there one maybe aside from the countable statistics, but maybe just from an intangible standpoint of, boy, that's a really big hole that we have to try to replace?
Yeah, before I answer that, I want to go back to Tanner Cuff going to Hawaii. You can't fault a guy for making that move, but a lot of it too was, and Tanner loved it in Evansville, and he kind of spoke on this, that he would have liked to stay, but in terms of education side, getting his master's, Evansville didn't have that really specific thing that he wanted. So, he went to Hawaii, and you can't fault him. He's actually teaming up with Yassine Toomey, who was on Evansville's team 2 years ago. They both are at Hawaii now. So best luck to them. But to answer your question of the 3 you mentioned there at the bottom of the screen with Comer, Pizzato, and Hafner, I really think with Pizzato's upside and just his raw talent, that would be one of the guys you would hope to keep. Obviously, he went to Xavier, and I know he's battling it's a knee injury right now, so hopefully he can get healthy at some point throughout the season and help out Xavier. But I would say Pizzato definitely had the most upside. I will say Tayshawn Comer was a very stable point guard. I thought at times he carried the team in a scoring role in a group that last year wasn't extremely deep, especially at the point guard position. Comer had to play 38, 39 minutes on a consistent basis where they're trying to, find spots to give him a break. But I'd say Pizzato's the one that you wish you could keep. And we're going to talk about the new group here. And this is all judging on paper and the resume and whatnot. But, I feel like at the positions that they lost those guys, they're just as good, or possibly they have upgraded from last year. And again, we'll see how it plays out. But on paper, I feel like they're still in a good spot.
In terms of the guys coming back, it is size. And that is one of the things. It just feels like the 6'10" and above crowd, as much size, it feels like it's kind of funneled into the conference here in the last year or two. Boy, it feels like David Ragland has cornered the market on let's go find some 6'10" and above, and that includes the reigning and defending defensive player of the year in Connor Turnbull. Got a chance to talk with him a couple of weeks ago, but what sort of growth have you seen from him since you last saw him in March that you think, okay, he's the defensive player of the year, but this is also a kid that, averaged 9 points a game last year and really flourished offensively in the second half of the season. He can roll that into this year.
Yeah, and I think I've touched on this with you before, but Turnbull, just his personality and his comfort in himself has really improved the last year. If you had a video of him today just interacting with his teammates and his personality compared to a season ago, and it's a complete 180. So I really have seen improvement in that. He seems to be happy here, a lot more comfortable. And I think when you have a year like he did last season, of course, that helps your confidence and become more comfortable. But you talk about losing all the guys in the portal, and while Evansville returned 4 players from last year that saw minutes, 2 significant minutes, they're 2 very big pieces. And I think in today's game, for a school like Evansville, if you can return a guy like Turnbull and even Josh Hughes from defensive perspective, that's a major win. And so I think with Turnbull being defensive player of the year, probably becoming a bit more consistent in terms of his versatility offensively. I think he showed that, especially the last month or so of the season, where he was averaging well into double figures scoring wise. His defense has always been solid, but I think mainly with Turnbull, it's just his comfort, his leadership, and personality has really improved over the course of the last season.
Josh Hughes, the Australian, averaged about 7 a game last year. What do you expect out of him from a growth standpoint this year?
Well, again, same with him. His defense has always been good, especially around the rim. I mean, Hughes was top 5 in block shots per game, joining Turnbull in that category as well. But Hughes had a disappointing season in terms of shooting it last year. His freshman season, he was mid 30% from three. But last year, very well known, Hughes struggled mightily on the road. He was well below 20% from the perimeter in road games. So I'd like to see more balance with Hughes as far as getting him more touches down on the paint, scoring around the rim. He is crafty. He has a nice touch for a big man around the rim. So not that, we want to see Josh stray away from perimeter shooting, but maybe more of a balance from him this year in terms of post work and also from the perimeter. Hopefully he shoots it more consistently this year as well.
You talked about the additions and the part that I'm really interested in, to your point, is just the experience in those additions and to kind of go one by one with a couple of guys just to get your thoughts. Keyshawn Porter, a fifth-year senior out of North Carolina Central, averaged about 11 points a game last year. What are the early returns on Mr. Porter?
Extremely athletic. And I was telling someone at practice the other day, one of our supporters, I said, I feel like Keyshawn is more athletic than Pizzato in terms of his jumping ability. He's just a few inches shorter than Pizzato is, so he can't do as much above the rim. But he is a high flyer, Keyshawn is. And I was talking with Coach Raugan about his shooting ability, and his numbers from his last stop was about 36, 37% from three. And you watch him shoot, and you wouldn't think he is that high level of a shooter. But Coach Ragland said he takes good shots. He's a high IQ player in terms of his shot selection. And that's kind of led to his higher percentage and maybe what he is as a shooter. But he is an athletic freak. He's a guy that if he can get downhill and I think about some alley oops playing above the rim, that'll be his strength. And certainly I think he'll provide a lot of excitement for this team.
One young man, it is not often you get a seventh-year senior. Alex Hemingway, I don't know if we need to start calling him Dr. Hemingway before the end of the year. He's been in school so long, but it has been a star-struck injury-struck existence for him, playing 5 games rather in the last 2 years due to injuries. Basically a hometown kid from Newburgh, Indiana, coming home. What is the expectation for a young man that, look, played at Vanderbilt, played at Clemson, obviously great pedigree, but it's like his body has had him on the shelf for 2 years. What are the expectations that you can get out of him this season? And can you get 20, 25, 30 games out of him?
Yeah, I think the expectation is high, again, if he stays healthy. And so far he has. I talked to him kind of late part of the summer, and he says he feels good. He really had to think hard in the offseason if he still wanted to play. And he said last year was difficult on him, mentally, and does he want to put his body through this for another season? And ultimately decided, hey, I do, and came back home to play, his final year of college basketball. It's people in Evansville remember Alex from his high school days, but it's kind of crazy to think he graduated Castle High School, which is about 15 minutes from the University of Evansville. He graduated in 2018. So yeah, that's a long time ago. But watching him in some of our scrimmage sessions and in practice, he is a pro on the court. Very, very crafty. One of my favorite games to watch with Hemingway when I go into practice, whether it's a shooting drill or scrimmage. Will he miss 3 shots in a row? And I still really can't recall him missing 3 shots in a row in a drill. Just a high-level shooter. When he does drills, when I'll take 100 threes from the perimeter, his goal is to shoot well above 80%, and more times than not, he does. A comparison with how he moves in his game is kind of like a Klay Thompson, just very limited movement. They'll hide him around some screens. He's deadly from the corner. And like I said, just a very crafty player. So if they can keep him healthy and with some of the other weapons that Evansville has, as far as being able to space the floor, I think he could have a very big year.
The international run, certainly Coach Ragland has gone overseas and been able to pull some guys out of there, but this really feels in this rev share world, NIL world, that's been more of a priority around the country. Certainly in the Valley. A guy that I know high on is one of 4 freshmen coming in this year, Leif Moeller, a 6'7", 22-year-old freshman out of Germany. He is a grown man that is coming in as a freshman. How much of an impact from day one is Mr. Moeller going to be able to have on this program?
Well, if the team's going to have any success, they're going to have a lot of impact from him at the point guard spot, and just with off his experience. You mentioned a grown man, and the first time that I saw him in the gym, he was at the other end doing some drills. I walked in, and his body looks like he's a 25-year-old professional, but he's baby faced, looks like he's 18 years old in the face. So he's got that mixture. But I think it was going to take him some time to get comfortable with his new teammates. He didn't get here to campus until the very last week of summer workout. So really this fall is his first time with the full team, trying to get used to his teammates and whatnot. And I'm kind of watching him practice. He picks his spots. He's trying to, figure out where he fits in. But as we've gotten close to the season, he's kind of ramped it up more, and we're seeing more of the Leif Moeller that we anticipate. But the one story, and I told this on my podcast whenever I interviewed him early August, but the one story that stood out is whenever he got to the States, Coach Snow, our assistant coach, went and picked him up at Nashville at the airport, and about the 2.5-hour drive back home. Their discussion was really just about the team and the sets they're going to run and the personnel, because Leif watched a lot of the games from last year. He studied his teammates. He was looking at stuff from summer workouts before he even got here. So this is a guy that's been through the professional ranks in Germany. So you think about the film study and the way they break things down. He'll be extremely advanced as opposed to some other players that be coming to the program for the first time. So a very smart player, a guy that can score, but also has very good court vision, gets others involved. So he's a very high-level point guard. Evansville's extremely lucky to have him.
And look, these kids that, and I say kids, I mean, he's 22 years old, but have played professionally overseas. They've been playing with grown men for years. And so the physicality of a normal high school freshman to college, he should be ready for it.
Well, so it's funny because one of the lines Leif dropped in the podcast, I said, well, what type of competition were we playing against over there? Because it was the top pro league in Germany. They also was at a level just below that. But he said, well, I was playing against grown-ass men. And it kind of chuckled. He goes, can I say it on the podcast? I said, yeah, you're good. But yeah, he's playing against legit 25-plus-year-olds that are extremely strong, and we know the Valley can be very physical, so I think he'll be well prepared for the season.
Schedule-wise, 5 home games, 2 non-D1 games, 3 neutrals, 3 roadies, which will certainly be challenges when you look at the total product of the schedule. What is your overall take on it?
Yeah, I think there's better balance this year than in previous years in terms of non-conference schedule. While there's some tough games on there, at least they have a few more home games mixed in. The road games are extremely difficult. You open up at Purdue on November 4th, first game of the season, and then you'll have a couple of what should be easier home games, playing some non-D1s for your first 2 home contests. And then it's intriguing, I think, mid-November, this will be more of a good barometer of where the team's at. You play Middle Tennessee State November 12th and UT Arlington November 18th, 2 teams you played on the road last year. They come to Ford Center this season. So I kind of circle those 2 games to see where the group's at. You go to the Virgin Islands for 3 games. We know we open up with Oregon State, which will be a tough test. And then you close out December, a home game against Ball State, at Western Kentucky, and at Notre Dame. So I do like having those kind of 3 games to close down conference against some opponents that are very quality opponents, but shouldn't be extremely overwhelming to where your team can compete. And then you open up with a pair of home games against Belmont and Drake, December 16th and 21st to be in conference play. So I like the balance. I think you want your non-conference schedule to be somewhat difficult just to test your team and to improve. And like I said, I think it's better balanced this year. What are your thoughts, Jeff, on the Valley schedule? Because it's different than previous years. Typically you can expect a consistent, hey, we're going to play mostly Wednesdays and Saturdays with occasional Tuesday and Sunday, but really it's all over the map as far as days that teams are playing. And I did notice on the schedule with SIU, our buddy Luke Martin, they will have like over a week from their last game to when Arch Madness starts. So it's a different dynamic. What are your thoughts on the schedule?
Yeah, at least I know Murray State's schedule. I'm assuming it'll be like this for everybody, that you will literally play every day of the week at some point during the year. SIU's got the break going in. Murray State is the one who has a bye. They have 1 game in the final 12 days before they will play. So potentially, if you're playing well, you want to keep playing. I think the most challenging part for the coaches, and I don't know if it's fully sunk in yet to them, is it's an NBA schedule. I mean, where you play every 3 days outside of, you get there's those 2-week breaks 2 1-week breaks in the middle when you get essentially a bye. But there's not a lot of time for in-season development once you get into the season. And I think that's going to be the part you play a game. And then especially when you have to travel a day and you got to get the guys off at some point. And that's going to be the part that's going to be interesting, is to see who can from January 1st to March 1st, who can get better. And it's going to be hard to do because there's just simply not enough time, because you're spending all your time preparing on games.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what has changed, this versus previous years, because you're still playing your 20 conference games, right? Previous years, you'd have a team you wouldn't play on the road and a team you wouldn't play at home. And I get it too. The Valley has to balance a lot more TV deals, I'm sure, with the TV schedule, and then do a few schools that play in off-campus sites. So I know for like Ford Center, you're battling the hockey schedule and any concerts or shows that come in as well. But I don't know. I don't necessarily like it. I feel like it makes everyone's life more difficult. At the end of the day, everyone is playing the same schedule. You're playing the same teams at home and away. But yeah, I wish they could get back to the more consistent, hey, mostly Wednesdays and Saturdays with occasional Tuesday, Sunday. I feel like that makes more sense.
And I don't know, the last couple of years, once the Murray Belmont UIC run came in, we always had the 2 games early, like late November, first weekend in December. So then you only had 18 games. And I don't know whether it's then or it's, right before Christmas and then you roll into it. I'm almost a fan, and not everybody's schedule is like this, where you play your 11 non-conference and now let's play your 20 in a row. But it's just a tight window. When you play that first week of championship week, it's, you've got a tight spot. And next year we're going to 32 games. So it's going to be even a little bit tougher. But yeah, there's a lot, December, and people forget, December, you've got a week that is lost due to finals, that nobody plays games. And I don't know. It'll be new, but it's just gonna be one after another. And that's the part that I think is most interesting. The last 4 years, starting with last year in the non-conference, Evansville 3-8, 9-2 2 seasons ago, but then 4-7, 4-7, with a improving team, an improving program, the wins ticking up on the conference side. Look, last year there's injuries and there's 100 reasons why things may not have gone as well as you wanted to go 3-8 in the non-conference. But looking at this schedule, is there at least hey, we can get off to a 6-5 even and just be on the winning side and feel good when we get to Christmas, and we're not feeling, like you're having to rebuild everybody mentally before you get into the grind of the conference schedule?
Yeah, I've looked at the schedule and talked with some people, just kind of what their thoughts are. This is away from the staff at the university, but yeah, I think we all have come to the conclusion 6-5, 5-6 would be a good mark, and hopefully they exceed that, right? But they do have some extremely tough road games on the schedule. So I think even if you were under 500 to 5-6, as long as you're competitive and continue to grow, I think that would be a successful non-conference season. Going into the Valley, I think this team really needs to make a jump this year. Coach Ragland did get the extension, but there is still some pressure on the program to, I think, finish middle to top half of the conference this year, especially with the roster they've assembled. And I mentioned being more ready to compete day one as opposed to previous years. So I'll be honest, I feel like if they don't finish higher than 8th this year, it'll be a disappointing season. Personally, I feel like their ceiling can be a 4 or 5 seed if everything aligns and goes well. But again, and this is the theme most years, but I think that 5-8, 5-9 range in the conference can come down to a game or two swing. And I kind of have Evansville in that group of teams, 5-9. I feel like on paper, in the Valley, the top 4 teams are pretty clear cut. I think Illinois State, who was the preseason favorite, I think Murray State's up there, Northern Iowa and Bradley, possibly Belmont, but those are kind of my 4 favorite teams. And we'll see how it plays out. But I think Evansville needs to have a season that they finish higher than 8th in the conference and be more mid to upper half in year 4.
I guess you're tied for 6th in the preseason poll, is Evansville, since we only got to see the top 5 coming out of the conference. But the Blue Ribbon yearbook had you guys slotted at 8th. So, I mean, that seems like you're okay with that.
Yeah, I am. And I'm not shy. I'll share where I picked them. And again, I think this team has a ceiling to finish 4th or 5th and get that first day bye over in Arch Madness. But as I kind of pencil people in, I picked Evansville 7th this year. So kind of in that middle grouping. So I think 8th is pretty fair. Again, I think they have a more talented team than 8th place, but just based off what's happened in previous years, the unknowns, it's a very fair assessment.
He is Jevin Redman. He is the radio voice of the Evansville Purple Aces. I cannot help but notice, as a fellow Ginger, fellow fair-skinned, at least. I don't want to group you into the ginger world, but going to the Virgin Islands as Murray State's going to Caymans. I have already got a economy-sized bottle of sunscreen. Are you locked and loaded for the Virgin Islands?
Hey, I've been to Florida twice this summer, so can't you tell I still got the tan going on? I was just thinking, man, we're almost into where I don't have to deal with the sun anymore. I prefer the wintertime versus the summertime with the skin complexion, but
Sure.
yes, the sunscreen is already packed and ready to go for November, and I can't wait for that trip.
Jevin, enjoy the next couple of weeks. I don't even know, it's a couple of days of silence before things get going. We'll see you soon enough, and appreciate the time this morning.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thank you. There is Jevin Redman. Yeah, it is going to the Virgin Islands in this time of MTEs that are kind of falling apart, and you just hope that you get to go someplace. Look, it's a student athlete experience. It's a radio guy experience too, but it's a student athlete experience. You want to be able to go someplace that can be a memorable place. And I think back to 2011-12 season. So we're almost on 15 years ago when Murray State had their season of they were 31-2, top 10 in the country, just that kind of magical year. Well, their MTE, they went to Alaska. I mean, they went to the Great Alaska Shootout. They had a bunch of kids on that team from Florida and Mississippi and Alabama that were like, Coach, what in the world? But look, it's a memory. They're always going to remember going to Alaska, and there's a big 8-foot tall grizzly, stuffed grizzly in the lobby of the hotel, and like those are those things that you want it to be memorable. Now, if you're not going to go to Alaska, which that event doesn't even exist anymore, but boy, you'd sure love to go to a beach, and whether it's the Caymans or the Virgin Islands or whatever it may be, that. Great opportunities for these programs and good opportunities to go, be able to pick up some wins for Evansville. They're going to open up with Oregon State. They're going to get Iona or Akron in the second game. Those are three really good teams. Whoever you're going to get, those are teams that are, the Bart Torvik projections, Oregon State 101, Iona 92, Akron 96. So those are right on the cusp of Q2, Q3 games, depending on how they roll this year. But, the home games, you get two non-D1s. Texas, Arlington, Ball State, those are both quad 4 opponents. Middle Tennessee is barely a quad 3. So, look, if you can get, there's 5 games, you get 4 of those. You'd love to sweep them, but boy, if you can get 4, you go get 1 or 2 down in the Virgin Islands, and then, look, you're going on the road to Purdue and Notre Dame. Those are both quad 1 opponents. Those are challenging in-state matchups for sure, some of the better teams in the country. Then you go to Bowling Green to Western Kentucky. I think there's a path, certainly, to it, and I don't think it's like boy, we need everything to fall right to have a winning record. But after the last couple of years and, the injuries last season, Gabriel Posado being hurt early to go 3-8 in the non-conference, you just feel like they're limping in to the Valley. And then, hey, we got off to, win 8-12. And that's the best we've done in a decade. And you're feeling, but then you look at the whole thing, you're like, man, we went 11-21. And just from again, everything through the vision of metrics, everything trying to how do we help this league get 2 teams in? The bottom half of the league has to do their part, and you need the floor to elevate. And I think they've got a situation this year. They can go win some games in November and December and help the greater cause, and then be an issue as we saw last year. Be a problem for some folks when they get to conference play. All right, one real headline of the morning today, and that headline is from the NCAA. Let's go one more time. Our friend Rocco Miller reporting and sort of aggregating reporting from various sources, as we talked the other day about the consistent move, I guess the inching towards we're going to have 76 teams next year in the 26-27 season in the NCAA tournament. And Rocco reporting that the plans of how we're going to get to 76, and maybe not how we're getting to 76, but what we do with the 76 when we have them, is that the bottom 12 automatic qualifying teams, your conference tournament champions, will be put into one pile. You will then have another pile of 12, the final 12. We talk about the last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4 out. Well, it'll be the last 12 at-large teams that are in. They'll go into another pile. There would be 2 sites, as we talked about. Dayton's still locked in. There's been talk about Albuquerque. Who knows what that secondary site would be. But it would be you would take those bottom 12 automatic qualifiers and you would pair them off. And then you take the last 12 in, you'd pair them off as well. And they would play in the opening round. And then the winners advance to the field of 68. So we go back to the whole thing from, a decade ago, 15 years ago, when they started calling the first four the first round. And then, the round of 64 was the second round. And eventually there was enough commonsensical pushback on that it became, let's just call it the first four. And then the first round is the round of 64 and so on. There's pearl clutching going on from corners of the basketball internet. And that pearl clutching is just simply that they just hate the fact they're 76. And I get it. The more that I look at this, to me, it just becomes a case of, look, what they do now is they take the bottom four automatic qualifiers and the last four in of the at-larges, and they go to Dayton and play in the first four. So now we're just taking those four and we're expanding them to 12 and just keeping that same philosophy. I think the part that, in the end, the small schools and the mid-majors or whoever, look, again, putting the last 12 at-larges in, is there going to be an extra mid-major or two in these 8 extra teams that are put in? Yes. But I think the part that has been lost in maybe some of the discussion points about Dayton and the first four is, in the past, in the world where we started with 64, was a case of you would have 16 seeds playing ones and 15s playing twos. And obviously at that time, there were no 16s to beat a one. The 15s would so rarely beat a two. And by grouping those 16s with each other, 2 of those 16 seeded teams were going to get money. They were going to get money for winning a game. So now you are doubling the units. And, I use this example all the time of when the Ohio Valley Conference, and just from the personal perspective, when it wasn't long ago. 5 years ago, the Ohio Valley Conference had Murray State and had Belmont and had Jacksonville State and had Austin Peay. And before all those teams, and Eastern Kentucky, before they all left, that was a league that when they won, you were going to send a team. They were going to be an 11 or a 12, a 13 maybe at the worst. And then you get special seasons, like Murray State's last year in the OVC, they were a 7. It was great. Well, you take those teams out, and those were basically the top 5 teams in the league. Well, now you're in a situation where the Ohio Valley Conference is going to send their winner and their representative to Dayton pretty much every year. SIU Edwardsville did not go to Dayton this past year, and that was almost a bad break. But it's like, if you get to Dayton and you win, you can now double your unit share for the conference. That's not a bad thing in the whole scheme of the world. Same thing as the mid-majors. Look, if you get in now, instead of being an 11 and having to beat a 6, and look, Drake did that last year. They went and they beat Missouri. Great. Missouri? I think Missouri. Yes. 7 months ago. I've slept since then. That can our 11s go beat 6s? 100%. But if our 11s who get in as at-larges, and again, these are the at-larges that are going to be put in. So our automatic qualifiers, we're never going to be in that bottom 12. I can't imagine, unless somebody, the last place team in the league suddenly gets hot in St. Louis, and then maybe, and then, hey, they've got a chance to go win a game because they're going to go play, one of the worst teams in the country from a metric standpoint, from the AQs. That now our second team, knock on wood, a third team comes in and they get in as one of those final 12 at-larges. Well, now they're going to play one of those other final 12 at-larges. So would you let's just say for last year, would you take a Bradley and have them that maybe they had enough to get in? Or if Drake hadn't won that's probably a better example. If Drake hadn't won, if they lost to Bradley and now Drake's in as an at-large, would you like Drake as an 11 to go play another 11 and go play the 13th best team in the SEC? or the 9th best team in the Big Ten, you bet your bippy you want to do that. 100%. We'll take that 100 times out of 10. And then you win that game, and then you still get a chance to go play the 6. So it is a traditionalist nightmare that we are not at 64, and that, I hate 65, and boy, I really hate 68, and boy, I want to burn the thing down that it's at 76. But the bottom line about all of this, and it's just about money. It's what makes the world go round. And as much as we hate it, and as much as it feels like it's ruined the sport, this decision that will ultimately give us the opportunities to have multiple teams and likely be in that group of 12 of the final at-large teams getting to play a similar team, it betters your chance of winning more games in the tournament and getting more units and benefiting the conference as a whole. And from that standpoint, I think it's okay. Does it? Now, the one thing that it does, and it was sort of like the argument against the old bracket buster, is when you have multiple mid-majors that would have gotten into the field of 68, and you're not giving now both of those teams the chance to go play a 6 seed and go play an upper tier team in a power conference likely. They're losing that opportunity for both of them. So it's a situation that you don't get 2 bites of the apple in the round of 64. You're only going to get 1. But the team that gets the bite of the apple in the round of 64 also has more money that they're taking home with them. So there's a trade-off there for sure. But I think from a financial standpoint, it is beneficial to the folks simply through the prism of through the Missouri Valley Conference, through multiple teams getting in, that it will help long term. Traditionally, I'm clutching pearls. Financially, I see the benefit, and we'll see how that plays out. If in the end, when they go to 76, that is ultimately the format. But I would they float these trial balloons. They kind of get the reaction. There's going to be a little blowback, of course, all the time. But the reaction to this has not been so damning that it feels like they're going to go in another direction. But we will find out soon enough because they've got to, the clock is ultimately ticking already, just trying to get the logistics ready for the 2026-27 season. All right, that does it for today. Thanks to Jevin Redman, my friend, radio voice of the Evansville Purple Aces, for being with us, continuing our preseason previews here in the Valley. Again, we've got college basketball this weekend. We have exhibition games. Bradley will be on the road at Green Bay. That'll be Saturday. You'll also have Drake on the road at Wichita State. So it's almost time. I mean, like 72 hours. We've got basketball. How exciting is that? And we'll have basketball to talk about coming up on Monday. So looking forward to that. Thanks for being with us today. If you haven't done so already, please head to YouTube, subscribe for free to Morning in the Valley. Like, share, comment, all of that. We've got all of our previews, interview clips, past shows for your viewing pleasure, broken down by team, so you don't have to go sorting and looking for what you want. But it's all there at Morning in the Valley on YouTube. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you Friday morning, 9 a.m. right here on Morning in the Valley.